Welcome to Circle of Brilliance. Today we're going to pick up where we left off on our last chat, and that had to do with preparing ourselves to do some sort of more formalized ChangeWorks coaching. If you end up getting a client through this whole YouTube based kind of thing. So yeah, and so we've worked our way through the white and the green, and we've talked about in the black, we talked about obstacles of the mind versus obstacles that are practical. But I said, because you guys are the coaches that are doing it, we may want to go a step deeper. And we talked about obstacles of awareness, obstacles of ability, willingness, and suitability. So some of those are most definitely in the practical range of things. So if you're saying like awareness, I think that by definition, most awareness is going to require, no, most gaps in awareness is because someone hasn't found out about something that's outside of them. There may be some awareness gaps as far as someone's sense of self goes, but I think there's a lot of times the big obstacles we're dealing with are that people don't really know X, Y, Z, whatever the case may be. And so I think when it comes to ability, that also feels a little bit more like it's an external thing, because the question for ability is, does this person know how to do X? Have they been able to prove their skill in doing X? Do they have all the resources necessary to do X? Even just describing it, it feels like it's more of a practical kind of thing that's a little bit more external. But when we talk about willingness and maybe in part suitability, I think we're talking about things be more of an internal focus, but who knows? I mean, I think the whole gamut is there. One other thing I wanted to say before we move on to solution and how it reflects back to obstacles is I wanted to remind you guys of something. And that is that when it comes to willingness as being a problem, so they're unwilling to do whatever, there is a reason for us to look at willingness as a primary obstacle versus willingness as a secondary obstacle. What I mean by that is that if someone is already unaware of something, or they are unable to do something, or they believe that they are unsuitable to do something, I would not be surprised at all to also hear them indicate that they're unwilling to do it. But that unwillingness is secondary to whatever the core issue happens to be. Where there are other times where the person has full awareness, full ability, and it is suitable, they just don't want to do it, in which case willingness becomes the primary obstacle. Are you guys with me on that distinction?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
good.
Yeah. And I think it's important to do, because if we immediately go to fix the willingness issue, but don't deal with the underlying core issue, well, then the unwillingness is going to come back, because we're just like they are. If we are unable to do something, unaware of something, or we feel like it's not a suitable thing for us, don't be surprised that we're going to give you some pushback. So, we're going to be at least unwilling to a certain degree there. So Brian, T, you guys are both unmuted. Do you want to throw something in?
I
I
don't
really I like that. Go ahead, T.
know. I was just going to say I don't have anything to throw in.
Okay, well, if you do, you feel free.
But I do believe that that whole thing about willingness and awareness um, aren't always in parallel. And sometimes they're almost like a perpendicular.
Oh, tell us
And
about that.
if they're aware, they may not be willing. But they say they're willing, but they may not be aware. And as soon as they are aware, they may not be willing. So you have to work between those two.
Yeah, I would agree. I would
Mm.
agree. Well, and again, anytime we're trying to divide up anything, as generic as obstacles into these little buckets, I know that our list of buckets is going to be incomplete. There might be a whole lot of other uns out there that explain why someone isn't doing something. And certainly, I think that we also have to recognize that when we try to put things into a bucket, we're doing something really contrived. It may be something that doesn't fit into bucket A or bucket B, but bucket AB, if there was a way to blend it together. So, yeah, so I think what you're saying, T, is absolutely right. Sometimes we just have to, we have to be with them in whatever moment they're in so that we can help to understand how these obstacles are. And again, for no other reason than to figure out which ones are really practical, because those have to be dealt with in a very different way than the things that are more on the obstacles of the mind. Shags, go right ahead.
Yeah, I had once heard a psychologist who was working with high net worth individuals. Originally, he was from Youngstown, Ohio, actually. I
Hmm.
heard him at a Financial Planning Association conference back in the 80s. And he said, "What's the most important decision we make that's based almost entirely on emotion and incomplete fact?
Hmm. Hmm.
Getting married."
Ah, well, that's, yeah. 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 Well,
Well,
that's very interesting.
many
Yeah.
times we do.
Yeah. There you go. Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so anyway, so point is, it's all going to these things. We didn't invent this stuff. I mean, we've just kind of noticed patterns in it and we've documented it. So I don't want to diminish what contribution we've attempted to make, but this stuff just exists out there in life as we know it. So I got to believe there's plenty of times that the obstacles could very much change in character, in content, in the amount of weight we bestow upon it, or power we bestow upon it. And that can change from one moment to the next based on how we happen to be thinking, or to T's point, what we might have learned along the way.
That's
So,
interesting to me how T described it. Again, 'cause I'm thinking like from a healthcare perspective. I remember reading a book, Change or Die. That's literally the title by
mhm.
Alan Deutschman, and he was citing research from John Hopkins patients who had a triple bypass. So the first bypass, they became aware of what led to that kind of operation. So he said the three F's, the fear, facts, and force, still didn't change their behavior because they had three. So I'm trying to think like, okay, you have this awareness now, but yet you still not changing the behavior that led to the first one. And then you have second and third. That's a, painful surgery to have and to recover from.
Of course.
So
And so your thought is they should change their behavior
I'm
because,
thinking like after the first one, would you I think you will want to.
yeah,
Like, who would want to go through
Brian,
that
I
again?
I just got to say you're thinking like a doctor. And that's not the way patients think. I mean, as we look at even the master stream, that person who just had a bypass, um, that bypass, or the fact that they have now had a successful bypass, they've worked their way through whatever the rehab needed to be, they're breathing better than they were breathing, they have more energy, good feelings come, at least I imagine they should, if you're going to go through something like bypass surgery. I've never had that. I've not talked to anyone who I know well enough to share with me those kinds of details, but maybe one of you guys have had the experience or know someone who has. It may very well be that feeling of renewed life that they have following it is something that's lowering their level of tension. And as that level of tension goes down, they start to set aside the exercises rehab told them to do. They start letting certain foods, beverages creep back in, certain behaviors creep back in, and sooner or later, their apathy, even though they are fully aware and have had the experience that you would think would have scared the daylights out of them, they kind of go, "No, I'm lazy." Problem returns. They have a second bypass. Then what happens, Brian? What's the pattern there?
I would think that they would want to stop, so they don't. These people have three bypass. You just can't. There's you're lowering survivability the more of those kinds of surgeries you have
Well,
like
of
this.
course, of
And
course.
so that's what I'm trying to get to because I tend to think about this in a grander scale. Like
Yeah.
it seems like humanity at large, we learn best. We have to get to these points where there's these dire situations, and then we kind of get it. But
Right.
I'm like, why do we have to go to that point?
Well,
I guess is what
I
I'm
would
trying to.
say to you that we don't have to, but that's how human nature operates. when it comes to, or looking at it through this lens of tension management.
Mm.
So, yeah, go ahead, T.
I can just add on to that. Brian, I think it's a hoot that you say this. You're a very disciplined young man. And at least it seems like every time I talk to you, I'm going, God, that's what I want to be. I want.
No, it's true. That's Brian.
Yeah. And, but there's two other books I think that are very helpful. And I really like that T has always talks about questions. Because if you want to change anything, you really must change the question in somebody's head. And so change your life, change your questions. And another book, and that's by Mary Lee Adams, but another book, change your life, change your brain, change your life, or something like by Daniel Amen.
Oh yeah.
You know, those are people, as T always says, go back to their comfort zones and what they know. And until we change the question in their head, and he always says, you know, he always works with questions. So maybe we need to change them, to change our questions, to make them more engaged and accountable.
That's a great option, because, you know, Brad, I wonder, did the doctors ever say to these patients, under what circumstances will you actually adhere to what I'm telling you need to do, unless you want to go to round 2 or round 3 of this?
Well, no, they did. You know, that's why in the book he could call them the 3 F's: the fear, facts, and force, because they were told, like, you can't, you know, continue to just have these surgeries. Sooner or later, your body will just
Right,
stop.
you just can't. There's nothing to
Right.
bypass
And
anymore.
so that wasn't enough to keep them going. But I like what T is saying, because then that changes the concept, right?
Well, you know, this idea about it changes the questions, I think, is really what's going on, because I think their mind is already posing a set of questions that
Right.
they are answering in such a way that they're being let off the hook.
Right.
And saying, like, no, you need to change those questions, so their tension, that's my way of reframing it, so their tension stays high about
Right.
making
Right.
behavioral changes. And so that's why I go back to this thing: under what circumstances will someone adhere to whatever the wisdom happens to be? And so, Brian, you said fear, something, and force. What was the one in the middle?
It's
Fact?
the facts. He said the facts, the fear, and the force didn't change their behaviors. The one that did, I think in this research, there was like astoundingly 60, 70% or somewhere didn't change. But the ones who did were emotionally connected to something. Like one said, I just wanted to live long enough to see my grandson graduated. That was enough impotence to kind of move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, and I'm speaking particularly from the vantage point of a man, I can tell you that one of the primary tension management devices that proved to be most likely to produce the desired outcome is a wife. So, you know, because accountability is constant. Don't you dare touch that, whatever food you're about to put in your mouth. What are you doing? You know? So I think that it's important. I make the joke about it's a husband and wife, but maybe that's part of it too, is that these individuals who are slipping down grid need a boost in accountability. That's one of the upgrade maneuvers. So who's holding them accountable? It can't be the doctor they only see every few months.
Yeah, and that's why I like that idea of changing your questions. Because if you only see someone a few months, like, how much trust do you have in them, right?
Right.
That's really good.
Yeah.
You know, I'll give you an example. My husband had a AAA, AAA, the aorta thing in 2001. And he smoked. He has terrible vascular problems. So anyway, he did smoke. And he always now says that he quit smoking in 2001, but I know it was early 2002 because I jumped in front of his car to say, you're not going to go get cigarettes. Now, I know that's really stupid. And I know there was a lot of emotion built around that. But it was so stupid, but it did change his thinking. I didn't have all of this awareness back in 2001, I have to admit. I might have approached it differently, but
still, this is all about you had this instinct.
Yeah.
And
So
so
he had to become aware of what it meant to other people.
very,
Right,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. Yep.
I still think how stupid that was. But
Other than the fact that you put yourself in physical,
I know.
harm's way, literally.
Thank God it was only an MG, but
Yeah, there you go. All right.
all right.
All right. So, yeah. So, Brian, that explains what's really going on. So, we've heard you on a few occasions now uh, express bewilderment that people don't follow through and do what needs to be done. It's like, buddy, that's just plain human nature. And Change Grid is explaining, or the master stream can explain why that's happening. All right, other comments, thoughts about that before we move on to the yellow step, where we come up with these solutions? Yeah, let's see. Oh, Tim just chatted something over. Let me go ahead and read this. Tim, you're certainly welcome to unmute and share any part of this you'd like. But as organizational psychologists, we've seen this dynamic literally hundreds of times, and our research and analysis have recently led us to a surprising yet deceptively simple conclusion. Resistance to change does not reflect opposition, nor is it merely a result of inertia. Instead, even as they hold a sincere commitment to change, many people are unwittingly applying productive energy toward a hidden competing commitment. The resulting dynamic equilibrium stalls the effort in what looks like resistance, but is in fact a kind of personal immunity to change. And then that's the link to where you got that. That's
Yeah.
very well stated. That's from the Harvard Business Review, or Harvard. Where's that from?
Yes, it's in the HBR publication.
Yeah. Now, they don't understand tension management as well as all of us do, but we can certainly almost restate what they're saying here from that tension management kind of situation, where we say that, what people really want is control. And
Mm,
all change requires an exchange of control to happen. I may have to give up control over certain things in order for me to gain control over something else. There is a price that needs to be paid. And so if you just imagine some sort of one of those old fashioned scales, balances, it's the same sort of a thing. So it may very well be that someone says, my desire to be able to be in control of my personal pleasure, what I enjoy eating, what I enjoy drinking, what I enjoy doing, whatever the case may be, could very well be greater than the control they think they're going to gain as a result of making whatever these changes and then giving up these sorts of things. So there's always going to be a debate going in there, and it's a trade-off of those. So you got to give up control to gain control. So yep.
So
All right,
would you say that I think I remember when I was first trained went through the training, that you said the black step was the most important. Is that accurate?
well, the black step is where the real work is. That's
Okay.
it's important to us in our businesses, but at the same time, the obstacles have no chance of arising unless we do the white step and the green step. So these are like
Okay.
prerequisites or first steps before I can even get there. But when it comes to us being able to demonstrate our value in the marketplace, it is our ability to identify and eliminate obstacles. And it's just a given. We have to be good at getting good goals defined, etc. We have to be good at understanding the current situation and maybe even some history. Remember that history is also part of your current situation because you bring history with you. So we got to get good at these. But the real work, what they're paying us to do, and don't even think that they're paying us for the solution. That's even incidental if you think about it. They just want the obstacle out of the way. How you get it out of the way, there's might be a lot of different approaches one could take. So we try to find ones that are efficient. We talk about things that are effective, efficient, and elegant. Do you guys remember those three E's when it comes to streamlining the coaching process or whatever? You want me to
No.
review those?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's about levels of satisfaction you have in your outcome. And so at the earliest stage, what people are looking for is something that will be effective in producing whatever outcome they're looking for. So effectiveness is a yes or no kind of thing. Did it or did it not work? Was it effective or wasn't it effective? And so, and that might be enough, but people may say, you know what, effective opens the door for a lot of things that may bring with them a lot of prices that make them an unattractive, although effective way of doing things. Let me give you an example of this. The one I've always given in the training is by starting by asking this question. How many of you own an electric drill? And I'm sure everyone's going to go like, yeah, it's somewhere. We got one. But if I said to you, how many of you wanted the drill? Is that when you went to the store did you go there because you truly, truly wanted the drill? Or what did you really want? And it's presented as a bit of a joke, but it's nevertheless, it's most true. What do people want, generally speaking, who are buying a drill?
Want a hole somewhere.
They want a hole. That's what they really want. Now, if I said, well, I need to drill a hole in my wall, so I need a hole in the wall. Tell me some ways I could produce a hole in the wall.
A hammer and a nail.
A hammer and a nail, just the hammer. Okay, my boot could definitely give you a hole in the wall. Hey, I could ram my car through it. I mean, if the point is just create a hole, well, then there are a lot of very effective ways of doing that. So are we clear? Effective is a very cut and dry yes or no. You did it or did it not give you what you said you wanted, at least on the surface, right? And so then if you get more clear, you say, well, no, I want a hole of a particular diameter. All right. Well, if I want a hole of a particular diameter, now I'm adding an element of precision. Now we go back to effective. What are the different ways that I might effectively produce a hole of that size? And that's where I go, Brian, you're right. You could use a hammer with a nail of that size. And as long as you're careful, you may very well be able to produce a hole. But we need to get into the element of efficiency now. So among those things that are effective, some are going to be more efficient than others. So the drill's got speed, it's got precision. Let's say I needed a whole bunch of them. It has an ease of repeatability. It can give me uniformity. I mean, there's a lot of things that could, given a certain set of circumstances, bestow higher efficiency points on one particular method versus another. So you get the idea there. Efficiency is about the number of resources that are going to be consumed in order to produce that particular outcome. So something that is being a very good steward of your resources, we would say that's a more efficient way to get things done because it's saving you time or money or mess or whatever it is that might be involved. So a lot of times people go like, oh no, I really want efficient. I really want efficient. Well, then we come along and say, yeah, but there is a level above efficiency that the best of the best want to strive for, and that is elegance. So elegance is about looking at all of the efficient methods. We'll assume they're all effective. We look at the efficient methods and say, which of these consumes the fewest resources? And the one that favors that requires the fewest resources, we would bestow it with the quality of elegance. Why elegance? But because any of the ladies on the call can tell you that there continues to be one outfit over the course of history that defines elegance. And what is that, ladies?
A little black dress.
A little black dress.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't figure it out.
Really, a little.
Oh my goodness, I failed that one.
A plain old black dress. Well, then I forget who the designer was, but she basically had this belief that when you put on your accessories, earrings, bracelets, whatever, the purse, whatever you happen to be doing, that when you look in the mirror, what are you supposed to do next?
Take off one piece.
take off one piece.
Oh, failed again.
So, because you're trying to say, I want to create this look, but I want to create this look in a way that requires the fewest accessories possible so that it is those few things that remain that get all of the attention. And so I think that's how we end up coming to this idea about there's a level that we want to go for beyond efficiency, and that's elegance. Why? But because when you can find the elegant way of accomplishing an outcome, you are basically liberating a lot of resources that in truth did not need to be consumed in order to give you an efficient, accurate, effective, blah, 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 all the rest of it. So that's our 3 E's. Most people say that all they care about is that it's effective. And forget drilling a hole. Apply this to the way that your clients might be interacting with their staff. And they say, we just want more sales. Well, all right, there's a lot of effective ways that you could get more sales. You could lower the price, you could increase the size of your team, you could become a bull in a china shop and just torment them and to do whatever. I mean, there's lots of things you could do that would work. Is that what you really want? I mean, that's what they're telling us on the surface, but what do we really know? No, they're trying to get as much bang for their buck as they can. And so this job about becoming an efficiency expert comes into play. Then I say, well, what you really want is an elegance expert. So, yeah. Okay, anyway, that was a very long answer to a very short question, but there you go. So, okay. So, with that, let's move on a little bit to the solution. What I've said all along is that the solution is focused on one area, and that is obstacles. Each color along the path, or each step along the path, reflects on the color that came before it, or the step that came before it. So the solutions address the obstacles. The solutions aren't really there to address the desired situation, because what's our belief? What's our belief? We believe that if you know where you're at and where you want to go, the reason why you're not already there is why?
Obstacles.
Because the obstacles are there. If we focus on getting rid of the obstacles, what should naturally happen?
The dessert.
Solve your problem.
They should reach the desired state. In fact,
Yeah.
I will say to you that the only circumstances under which that person will not achieve their desired situation is, thoughts? What do you think? What do you want to say? If you eliminate all their obstacles and they still aren't there, what's the truth?
Willingness.
There's
Yeah.
another obstacle, and it's an obstacle of willingness.
Man.
Right. There must, if you are still not at your desired situation, there must be some other obstacle, real or imagined, that we have not identified up to now. So we need to identify it, get clarity around it, and come up with a solution around it. And I do believe that many of the times, it's not that suddenly we discover another physical obstacle that's out there. It's because some obstacle of the mind pops back into play and they become, to T's example, unwilling to do something. Or maybe it's just a tension thing. And again, I do believe the tension has physical, emotional, and intellectual aspects to it. If you take the physical for a moment and set it aside, that leaves these intellectual and emotional sorts of possibilities, both of which tend to happen in the mind. And so there can come up with all kinds of things that are either going to increase their tension, reduce their tension, or just sustain it in a way that doesn't hit a threshold. So nothing actually ever occurs from that. Do we all agree that we've all encountered that kind of a situation before?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it. So I know this for certain. My job is to, after I've identified the obstacles, is to eliminate them. And depending on what the obstacle is and what category of obstacle it falls into, the solution needs to change its shape. So when it comes to you doing this with a client and you find out, well, there are some obstacles that are in fact part of reality. So let's say you're talking to someone who wants to start a business. or start a new business, whatever, because obviously they're engaged in your services, so something's going right. But anyway, they want to do something new and different, or in addition to what they've already got going on. Well, what are some of the physical obstacles that could interfere with them doing that, or be successfully doing that? Why aren't they already there? Any thoughts? What kind of physical obstacles might be preventing them from?
Well, they don't have the right resources.
Well, they don't have the right resources. Maybe they don't
Yeah.
have enough of a particular resource, and you can fill that in with time, money, people, energy, all kinds of stuff. Could
Mhm.
certainly be a physical one.
There could be other people that are hindering them.
Yeah, you could have other people that are either pulling you away from it or preventing your progress, or whatever, because people have got their own agenda. If you don't have the right group of people around you, then the support isn't there, or it's the wrong support. So what other physical obstacles might be in someone's way? And let's go back: unaware, unable, unwilling, unsuitable. What are some of the awareness issues that might interfere with someone
Well,
doing what
I,
they need to do?
I think sometimes people might say, well, it's really that person who's the problem.
Okay, and so
That goes
they're and they might be right, or they might just be saying that to
right.
deflect it, right?
I
Or they
think
might
too,
not know
Keith,
where to start.
They might not know where to start. They may not know how to go about doing something. Yep. And Tim, what were you throwing in?
well, I was just going to suggest it could be the awareness of what they would have to lose.
Ooh.
Oh, there you go. So they really haven't done that 4 blocker. And again, I'm hoping if you're in that situation, you've already done a good job of white and green. So, but you might need to return to that little 4 blocker if they haven't made that progress. What could be in their way? I'm also thinking of certain things for obstacles. In fact, I'm reminded of a recent episode of one of our favorite shows, which is Ghosts. If you guys have not watched Ghosts, Ghost is very funny, very clever. There's also a UK version of it, which is much darker, but the one that they're doing in the US is really more of a comedy than anything else. Well, during one episode, they're converting this mansion into a bed and breakfast kind of an inn, or a small hotel, and so and they're doing things like an afternoon little party where they serve wine, and giving people bottles of champagne and blah blah blah, and they come to find out that they don't have a liquor license, so they need a liquor license. So
Mm.
so that's very much a practical obstacle that they didn't even think about, because they're not selling the alcohol. They're giving it away, but an establishment like that still has to have a liquor license in order to distribute those kinds of beverages. At least that's their storyline that they're going with. And so sometimes it really is an obstacle. I'll say it's an obstacle of awareness, but it's really an obstacle of ignorance. They may not have genuinely not have known. So they're unaware of what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so there are always things like that out there. Now,
Hey T.
yep, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was looking over some content, some Ken Blanchard content, his self-leadership content, and he talks heavily about assumed constraints and how people, just based off of, some of it has a lot to do with past behaviors or just how they perceive certain situations, that they create those mental blocks and give up their power
Yep.
for in those situations.
And so it'll be interesting, because you've just basically said that something outside of them that could fall into this practical kind of category has stimulated something internally that is now becoming more of an obstacle. Yeah. And that obstacle, again, obstacles of the mind, they might be accurate, they might not. They're just, this stuff is happening in your head. And so we have to really evaluate and scrutinize whether you're right or wrong. But, nevertheless, it's still in your head. And because it's in your head, you're going to operate accordingly. So we have to figure out a way to do that. I just want to say, as far as these practical obstacles are concerned, this is why, depending on what it is that is in their way, you may need to change from being a coach to being a consultant. You may need to tap into certain resources to let them know what it is that they don't know, what the procedure is they really need to be following. All these practical things have practical solutions. And so these, I think, are very much the domain of a consultant. even take it up a step. I don't know what you actually call it professionally, but you know who people who are kind of like CEOs for hire, where you can do a what do they call it? A fractional executive.
Fractional, yeah,
Yeah.
fractional.
So those people are there to do very specific tasks for very specific reasons, perhaps for a limited time frame or a specified time frame. That's really not consulting, because consulting, we're telling them what to do, but I don't consider my consulting to imply that I'm going to do it, right?
Mhm.
So if I tell someone they need to write, in fact, this has happened a lot, I'll say you need to write a one-page introduction of yourself and your company for your marketing or whatever. And then they go, well, great, can you write it? And my answer is, yeah, I can write it, but do you really want to pay me my hourly rate to write something? I mean, if you do, that's fine with me. Just go into it with your eyes wide open, because you can get something written for, I think, a different hourly rate than I'm charging you as a consultant. And so, so you get the idea. I think you may sometimes, to get rid of these obstacles, you may have to be more than a consultant and actually become like a new member of their team, and you're carrying responsibilities to complete certain things. I should be around here with solution. You're carrying responsibilities in order to help get rid of some of those obstacles. I mean, if they make it a sweet enough deal and you feel like it, well, have at it. All right.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about these things, because I think they really are rather straightforward, particularly with the availability of tools for us all to use, like Chat GPT and its many competitors. Have you guys all on the call, have you guys played much with Chat GPT yet?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to tell you, if you haven't played with it yet, here's all you need to do. You go to openai.com. Openai.com? Yeah, openai.com. They might also have .org because they're a research organization. Nevertheless, openai.com. You scroll down a little bit and you'll see a graphic about Chat GPT, and it's going to say the word try. So don't be looking for sign up. Don't be looking for enroll. You got to look for the word try. And when you click on try, you create a very quick little account for yourself, and you're good to go. Sometimes the servers do have some capacity issues, but if you want to, if you're really going to use it and you think Chat GPT is the right solution for you, by the way, I don't feel that it's the right one for me, but it's still very powerful and it's free. You can pay a little upcharge so you can get to the front of the line if there's a heavy load on the servers and that, but nevertheless, Chat GPT. So here I am working with one of my clients, and they said that they need my help for them to complete a particular task that they're looking for. And without getting into the details of the whole thing, they are trying to sell their company, or getting ready to sell their company. But their company is really odd, because while it has done very well for itself, along the way, kind of incidental to doing very well for themselves, they created a piece of software that they have only used for their limited kind of client base, which is in a single industry. But this piece of software could be deployed at every industry that there is. And so I've been saying to my client, yeah, you can sell the company, but you really should look into selling the intellectual property independent of the company, because it could command many times the amount of return that selling your company would. So can you guys understand the
Yep.
scenario I'm painting?
Yes.
All right. Well, so she goes, well, can you help me figure out how to do that? And of course, my thought has always been, if you give me a topic in 2 weeks, I can come up with something that'll be very valuable for you, very insightful for you, because this is what I do. And so I thought, I'm going to go to Chat GPT. And I went to Chat GPT and I said, please outline for me the process that someone would need to follow in order to successfully close an intellectual property acquisition deal from a third party. And Chat GPT immediately says, wonderful. And then it rattles off, here are the 22 steps that one would need to follow. And it
Gosh.
includes everything about due diligence. It includes all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at a lot of it. You know, you guys can imagine, if you spend enough time doing what all of us have done for a living, you already know a bunch of stuff that you would say you got to do. But boy, it gives you all the little intricacies. And it just
Wow.
spells it out. I didn't have to Google search it and dig through a whole bunch of websites and wonder if I can count on it when I can go to artificial intelligence that's automatically reading and surveying all the stuff that's out there and giving me the essentials. So I bring that up because we have an ever growing set of tools available to us to deal with these kinds of physical obstacles that we might get called upon to do on occasion. I then asked that I said, now, well, the company is also going to be sold, meaning that everyone will maintain their jobs. Um, uh, Sooner or later, the employees are going to find out that this is happening. So what do we need to do on the support side of things, on the social side of things, on the psychological side of things, on the culture, all those kinds of things? What do we need to do to make this a very positive, uplifting experience for everyone when they find out? And ChatGPT comes back and says, it says, well, here's all the things that you can do to make it more comfortable. But the most important thing for you to do is be as transparent as possible, as early as possible. So they said, you want to make sure, this is ChatGPT, just this artificial intelligence talking to me. And it says, you need to make sure that the person they learn about this from is you. And so it's I'm kind of going like, oh my gosh, not only will it give you the information, it'll slap you up the side of the head. And so I thought
You said that the person is what?
the person is
You.
you.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's what it says. It said you have to make sure that whoever they hear this piece of news from is you. Because if they hear it through the grapevine, if they find out about it because a press release was going on, or all these strangers are calling your company asking you, you know, all sorts of things, you know, you don't want them to figure it out. You don't want them to think that you have some reason to hide it. They know you're of retirement age. So this is not a surprise. They just want it to be painless. So my point is that we do have an ever-growing set of tools available to us to help us get our thoughts together. And without giving too strong of a pitch for ChatGPT itself, those kinds of artificial intelligence tools feel very human very quickly. And it's as though whenever I go to ChatGPT, I feel like I'm having a conversation with a highly intelligent and very gentle friend. So it's a very weird feeling when you kind of go like, why do I keep saying please and thank you to this artificial intelligence? And because it'll tell you if you ask it to tell you about the artificial intelligence, says I am a construct, I'm artificial intelligence, I have no opinions, I have no feelings, I have no involvement, I'm simply here to assist you in any way that I can. And it's like, but I want you to have more personality, I want you to have more humanity. So it's a very weird thing. So play with it and tell me if you don't feel like you're sitting across the table from a very knowledgeable and trusted advisor slash friend. So
MIT has a certificate program in AI.
for people that are doing this programming and that, yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know how comprehensive it is, but when I came across it, I was wondering if it touches on things like what we're discussing.
Well, in fact, I was listening to an interview of people that are doing this kind of AI development. And the question came up about, will people be able to go through a degree program for it? And they said, there are certain mechanical things that they can learn in that. But the problem is that the technology is changing month to month to month. So if you're involved in a 4-year program, whatever you started learning in year 1 and year 2 are so obsolete, they're worthless. So they're saying that the problem with traditional education is that it cannot keep up with the speed of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So
But
isn't that
they,
interesting? So,
but the thing that Tim is talking about, what they're teaching is,
all right.
because we're looking at it in generative AI in healthcare. So it starts with like the basics, because in terms of the evolution of whatever industry you're in, you have to understand how to apply it in both near-term application use, but then
Mhm.
also you'll be more interested in understanding where it's growing. So at least you understand it, because that's been the challenge with what economists call structural unemployment. When you
Mm,
have all this new technology come out and then people are not interested or unwilling in many cases to re-career and to learn new skill sets.
right, 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 right.
And so that's what they're trying to prepare people for. And that's the MIT's way of kind of going about it
Yeah,
without
because
saying
they
that.
need, and I think that's what the whole point of this was, is that if you're going to be going and getting any kind of advanced formal education in the area, you really want to make sure that the institution you align yourself with is looking 10 years down the road,
Mhm.
15 years down the road, not giving you a degree in what's happening in the contemporary space. Uh,
Right.
for example, OpenAI is a research company. And what it basically does is it offers to any developer access to the open AI or the chat GPT, what do we call it, application, I guess, because
Architecture.
yeah, because it can be merged into anyone's existing website. So someone could come to your website, instead of them having to read through the pages, you could just ask the AI there, where will I find this in your website? Tell me about this. And it just starts to communicate to you just like it does in ChatGPT.
You know, in one of the industries that I serve a great deal in insurance, they've actually come up with artificial intelligence underwriting.
Oh my. Okay.
And you know, the problem with that is it it takes into account all the factors and probably does a better job than a human. But who do you talk to?
Well, exactly right. Exactly right.
Hmm.
And so there's going to be limits, but I'm just wondering how quickly some of these limitations are going to be overcome, if you will. Like, for example, the academic community basically said, well, the ChatGPT is going to undermine education because people won't be writing their term papers. They're going to just have an artificial intelligence create it. And so Chat GPT said anyone who's an educator can also download the Chat GPT scanner. So
Hmm.
they can put anyone's dissertation, term paper, whatever, and it tells them exactly what percentage of the content was generated by AI.
Yeah.
And so I think
I,
it's great that they're smart enough to go, we're going to give you a tool that has a lot of value to a lot of people, but you are not going to use this to bypass some of these educational sorts of things. Yeah.
yeah, so it's an obstacle for many people, but it's going to challenge these industries to think differently, like especially in education. Because if you think about it, you know, the paper, like an MBA, those kinds of things aren't even worth, 170, $200,000. When
Yeah.
you come out and you can't apply that information, you're not able to like really move things forward.
Mhm.
And so they have to rethink how they're training. That's where it's going to challenge education to say, okay, yeah, so we have this chat GPT, we have AI, but let's look at it for how it can move everyone forward, all stakeholders, so
There
that
you
people are understanding how to use this as a tool. Because to just iterate information doesn't mean you learned it. And that's how people are being
go.
taught.
Yeah. Yep. 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 No, it's absolutely right. So there's a whole world there that needs to be dealt with. What I wanted to do is just say again that these sorts of tools can be very useful to us when it comes to the solutions to practical obstacles.
Hmm.
That makes our value even greater when it comes to our ability to help people with the obstacles of the mind. And so what I wanted to do, and I guess we're at the top of the hour, so we'll do this next time around, is I want to talk about how this this need to address obstacles of the mind is different than it was perhaps a few years ago, and is probably going to be different in the short run as well. How we go about helping people with issues of well, again, unaware, unable tend to be more on the practical side, but unwilling, or even dealing with unsuitability to find out that you're not right for something, you know, the loss of something. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done where I'm squiggly. And that's what I'd like to talk about next. And
Yeah.
then we'll finish it all up with how the feelings come into play when it's time for them to come into play. Thoughts?
There's just one question I kind of have, and you know, when it comes to the Chat GPT,
Yes.
and really looking at solutions, I just wonder if there's a generational difference of how to attend to those who are going to be working in the future
Mhm.
versus those that are there now. Because I think that a lot of kids are being told, you're great, you're wonderful, you can do everything. And as soon as they encounter that, oh my gosh, I can't do something, it's
Mhm.
true.
Derails them. Yep.
They don't have the self-discipline to say, yeah, but okay, what am I good in? So it's, you know, it's being able to attend to the, what you said, the obstacles of the mind.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
sometimes those experiences are so different at generations.
Well, I think it's the generation, and also it's also goes a little bit back to the status quo. So, for example, I saw an article, I think it was this morning, might have been yesterday, but nevertheless, it's up online, that talks about the 20 professions that are most likely to be negatively impacted by AI.
Mm.
And so, and it's all sorts of things that you go, hey, these were high-paying careers. Well, one of them that is most in jeopardy is programming, because the AI can program far faster than a human being can. And because it's coding, you know, it's very procedural, very whatever. They can do it. They can do all the documentation at the same time. You know, they can do all the built-in security, all that sort of stuff. So that was probably the biggest. The biggest area that's going to be compromised. But they said that you can go to Chat GPT and you can say to it, please write a book for me. And it will say to you, on what subject? And you tell the subject and it starts writing the book for you. It's writing something unique for you. And so the thought that you could then just like take that and put it up there, it's very interesting to find out about how many people have already been making millions of dollars using Chat GPT to create, basically it's what am I say? I guess it's customized children's books. You know how a kid, sometimes you want to get them a book that they're reading a story and it's all in their name. So that sort of a kind of thing. They've created all these different stories, but they didn't write the book. They said, Chat GPT, tell me a story about a little girl who you know, takes over this, and whatever it is you're trying to just have is like the moral of the story, and it'll write the whole thing for you.
Well, glory be. Why did I do mine?
Yeah, well, there it is.
In fact, that is a book that's being sold now, How to Write a Book Using Chat GPT. It's
Right.
this guy, Hassan. He writes short business books, like business books for managers. And so that's kind of his niche, I guess.
Yep.
And so his latest book is How to Write a Book Using Chat GPT.
Yeah, and there's also people selling little things up online through Amazon, because Amazon, they can go direct to publish it on Amazon. I saw one where all it is a very short book about how a best man should put together the little speech they're supposed to give at the wedding. And now that's been picked up by all these different wedding websites or whatever, and it's like, he didn't write that, or she didn't write that, whoever it was. They had Chat GPT. Crap that. Anyway.
See, there's a college professor that has made that a requirement for his course, that there are times during the curriculum where students will be required to do work in Chat GPT, but there are some conditions, such as you have to, if there is data in the report or in your submission, you have to indicate where you validated the data, because
There you go. Good.
sometimes it's incorrect. But his position is that he recognizes that this is the future direction, and it's going to be a part of how we live and work. And he felt that, why not get on the front end of it? And to the question, I think it was T that posed the question around, the younger generations. His thing is, why not teach them how to use it and use it effectively?
That's smart. Very
Very
smart.
good. Very
The
good.
thing
Hey,
Yes,
This-
Linda.
what maybe you guys have already talked a little bit about this, but there are over 900 companies led by Apple and Microsoft and name a big company who have already been in the process of working to it's a that little eye that is in a little circle on your camera,
Yeah.
and you can tell when you took it. The
Yeah.
same little eye will be on everything,
Mhm.
and you can go in and see when it was changed, if it was changed by AI, if it was, this is the author, so that
Mhm.
people know what is AI and what isn't, and what's yours.
Very good. Very good.
I was just thinking when I was teaching online, master's and undergraduate, and I quit because people did not give their sources, and they actually just it was just awful.
Yeah.
But what I found is that when I was writing my book, I found that there's so many things that were absolutely wrong on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
And so even though they go back in to verify sources, etc., books that were written on what I wrote about were wrong.
Right. Correct.
And so I didn't use them. I tried to dispel myths, and things that were out there. So, it concerns me if they're using stuff from the internet. It's not all right, as we all know.
No. And again, I think the AI bit of it, okay, AI can only be as good as whatever the source material is
Right.
for whatever it knows. And if that source material isn't vetted before the AI gets even exposed to it, well, then what can the quality of output even be?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess someone should do a piece of research and say, let's train this version of the AI in stupid, wrong stuff, and we'll train this one in the good, smart, right, provable stuff, and let them both build a case for why they're right.
Right.
It could be interesting. I'm going to imagine it's artificial intelligence. They'll both build a case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're over our time, so you guys go ahead and play with it. I got to tell you, as big of an issue as it may be. Oh, wait, one funny story real quick. Linda, unmute. So Linda is part of the League of Women Voters, and you can tell them that she had one of her colleagues ask her to look over an email. You want to tell people about that little story, dear?
Yeah, I thought I already told you guys. I wrote an email for an upcoming program that a friend of mine and I were presenting for the league, and it sounded very boring. And so I put it into GPT and I said, make this exciting, something I would like to attend. And oh my God, it came back, well, I'll go to that.
It was funny.
Oh my God, it was fabulous. So I sent it to my friend, and her response was, I'm going to send you something every time I need your magic.
Linda didn't tell her that she used ChatGPT to create it.
Magic fingers, Linda.
Oh my God, it was the most beautiful ad.
Right. So if you got, if you wanted to start a business as a copywriter and you can find enough people who are clueless about AI, you could build yourself quite a nice little practice. Charging for hours for a query that got completed in like 30 seconds.
Wow. That's a hoot.
It was really fun. It was really fun. So now I'm helping one of my friends who's had absolutely no luck hiring people for her business, and she's got an amazing business, and she's an amazing boss, and so we're rewriting her ads by telling GPT, make this compelling for someone to send in their resume. And
Right.
things like
And you can be very specific because you can tell ChatGPT, please write persuasive copy that would be effective in with a population of people that are highly educated, very discerning, and in the upper scales of economic life or whatever. You can tell it, and it will modify the language to really resonate with whoever you describe it to be. And if you really want to
Wow.
have fun, tell it to do it in the voice of Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
Ah,
It does, or it'll tell it in the voice of William Shakespeare, and it will. It will. So anyway, it's kind
really?
of fun. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
OpenAI.com, T.
It's openai.com. Yeah, and
Okay.
scroll down like down half the page or whatever, you'll see a big kind of graphic about Chat GPT, but you're looking for the word try. That's what you click on to get things going. And by the way, every time you want to use it, you have to go back there and click on try, and then it authenticates you back in the system because it remembers all the conversations you've ever had with it. So you pick up where you left off, and it completely remembers everything. You don't need to re-educate it on anything. It's there.
So I won't need Prevagen anymore.
No, no.
Okay.
There you
Thank you.
go. Yeah.
See, I went in and set up an account, and all I do now is go in, log in, and boom, there's all my chats.
All
Yep.
the chats are on the left. You can delete them if you don't want them, if there's something spurious.
I mean,
but
it's free, set up an account.
yeah, that is, by the way, a good best use or best practice. If you want to talk to ChatGPT about multiple topics, make sure you click on new chat when the topic changes. If you want to go back to part of the chat, you can click on that one and it remembers all of that. But if you try to do a bunch of things all at once, you're not going to be able to be as efficient at getting back to things to build on what you've already talked about. And I've been playing with this because the book that I wrote for MasterStream was originally written as a script for an audio program back in the days of audio tapes. And I really wanted to just update it. And so I've been giving ChatGPT a chapter at a time and saying, this is written as a script, please turn it into a readable textbook for someone with a bachelor's degree. And it puts that together. So it's rewriting the whole thing. My challenge is that it writes it in a rather generic voice. And I learned by watching some YouTube videos of all things on how to train your Chat GPT to duplicate your writing style. And that's a different thing where you're basically saying to it, here's an article that I've written, here's something I've written, here's something I've written. I want you to read all of these and see if you can create the tone and the cadence and the whatever of my writing style. And it's getting much closer, because I tend to write in questions. And that's not how things are generally written. So it's kind of fun, but the Chat GPT is learning. And for some reason, I think the Chat GPT, the AI I'm talking to is a guy. He lives in the United States, but he was originally from Sweden, and I call him Sven. So, and you just tell the beginning, I need to have a name to call you. So from this point forward, you're Sven. And so they go you go, hi, Sven. They go, hi, Mr. Napier. And so it's very fun. It becomes very real very quickly. So play with it, but then, start to dabble in it. And I think you're going to find it you're going to say, I'm sure you're going to say, good grief, if I had had this 10 years ago, just trying to write copy for a brochure. Oh my gosh. This could have been so handy, so handy.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anyway, that's all for now. So we'll talk again in the next couple of days. So bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.